We're going to go through this. I do get going where I start talking pretty fast. So if I do that, please just pop in the Q&A to slow down. I will slow down. I will try to make this as entertaining as possible and as good as possible, because what happens is sometimes we get sitting on these calls and we're listening to the same person talk nonstop. And it's like, I'm going to fall asleep. So I'm going to try to get you to not fall asleep through me, and we'll go from there. So we're going to go through 6 things today. We're going to go through things you don't have to do with Sage Intacct, year-end preparation, financial year-end close process, create fiscal year reporting periods, 1099 preparation and processing. And I can't wait to talk to everybody about that one based on how our 1099s were last year. And then we're going to go through some frequently asked questions that tend to pop up from year to year. So hopefully we can curb any of those questions that you have that we before the end of this. So things that you don't have to do. Are you ready for this? It's Sage Intacct. It's cloud-based. You don't have to do anything to close at the year end. Thank you very much for attending. We'll talk next year. Actually, don't leave. Please don't leave. Don't leave, really. But that is to show you that there are a lot of things that you no longer have to worry about with closing. I came from the Sage 100 world as my last software that I used before working with Intacct. And there was a lot of stuff that I had to do on a monthly basis and yearly basis to close in a certain order, this, that, and all kinds of other stuff. And if you broke that list, everything broke for you. And then I got to call my RKL associate with Sage 100 and spend some time working with her, which was absolutely great, except I didn't want to have to do that because I knew, unfortunately, there was going to be a bill coming later on. All right. So what don't we have to do? We don't have to back up data. Yes, that is awesome. No more running a backups, plug it in your external hard drive to back up all that data, take it to the bank, put it in your safety deposit box so that it's offsite, back up somewhere else that goes to a remote site across the country so that we've covered all of our disaster relief. Sage Intacct handles that for you, okay? We don't have to worry about that. Now, in the event that everything goes down with Sage and everything is lost, that's not going to be on us. That's going to be on Sage Intacct. So we are good. No more backing up data. Don't have to worry about your disaster recovery plan. Already talked about that. Purge history and lose access to detailed transactions. You don't have to do that. That is so awesome. All your data is there. Now, I'm going to put a little plug in for our implementation people who we always go through and say, okay, so when you're going through your AP bills, we're going to teach you about custom views. One of those custom views you're going to want to put in there is that we're going to filter to look at everything but posted transactions, because Intacct is the greatest thing ever written, and we're going to be in Intacct for 30 years, 35 years from now. I don't care what I spent 35 years ago. Okay. So it's always going to be in there. You're not purging it out. You're not going to lose it. It's there. So we create custom views so that we don't have to see everything that we don't want to, right? So that we don't fill up and all that other stuff. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, shame on your implementer, but I know our people. I know you know what I'm talking about. But if you do need any help with setting up some of those views because we forget what those are, just let us know. We can always reach out for you on that because we don't want to look at 35 years worth of data in here. Okay. Install service updates. Oh my gosh, that was so fun with Sage 100. Sage is still a good product, but patches were a pain. We had to go through every year. All right, we have to get the next version, bring it up there. We don't have any of that, okay? We don't have to worry about any of that. Sage does, as you well know, Sage does 4 quarterly updates a year, and that happens behind the scenes. They're great about telling us, hey, these are what's coming out in the next update. Then once they do it, they're really good about saying, hey, this is what we just did. And if none of that makes sense, we're always here at RKL to say, hey, I can explain this for you, what that really means for you. So hopefully, for those of you who are newer to Sage Intacct, you are looking at those notes when they come out for the quarterly release updates. I know they put videos on there. I know for the last quarterly update at RKL, we put one out. The reason I know that is because I did it. So we've been putting some of those quarterly updates out, information in our words, with the help of our friends at Sage Intacct, because we don't rewrite the book if we don't have to. We just kind of take that and give it our little spin, and because we do a much better job of explaining things at RKL. So we don't have to worry about service pack, any service updates like that for year-end documents, 1099s, none of that. That all happens behind the scenes for us. Okay. The other thing we don't have to do is we don't have to complete an official roll forward process of retained earnings. So if you or some of you who were on other systems like a Sage 100, I believe like a Great Plains, basically anything other than QuickBooks, you had to, at the end of the year, do an official hard close, rolled everything into retained earnings. For those of you who were in QuickBooks prior to that, basically we work the same way. Sage Intacct does the calculations behind the scenes when you run. So it never fully technically officially closes. It just closes the net income, the income and expenses to retained earnings at that point for when you're running that report. All right. Year-end preparation. Year-end preparation, you definitely want to close your subledgers, okay? AP, AR, PO, if you have it, OE, if you have it, GL, we'll get to that a little bit later. You definitely want to do that, okay? You can close all of your entities at once. You can close one entity at a time, but the best practice is close monthly or quarterly. Notice I kind of mumbled the quarterly. Close monthly, right? And close as you go. What does that mean? Well, that means that, hey, we're going to put essentially, if you think of, I know I see some people in here that I know from QuickBooks. We're going to, you say, okay, we're getting to that point where we're going to close. We have to put a password on that. Basically, because of the way Intacct works with permissions and the way we set our permissions up, and we only give certain people permission to do that, you can close a subledger at any time. Now, what's the damage behind doing that? Absolutely nothing, because if we made a and we shouldn't have done that, we can just go in and open it back up, okay? So it is best practice to close as you go. Generally, AR is pretty much locked down after the first. At some point, we have to close AP, okay? At some point, it has to happen, and we used AP on here. I hear, well, sometimes I get invoices 75 days later. That sounds like something we may want to work on from a perspective, a business process perspective, but at some point we have to close AP, okay? Just has to be done, all right? So how do we do that? Well, in this example where I use AP, let me grab my annotator real quick. My spotlight, right? Here we go. Oh, here we go. Spotlight's on you guys. So you'll go to in this example, we'll go to the accounts payable module. Under all, provided we have permissions to do that, okay? So the first thing I usually hear is, I can't do that. Well, maybe you don't have permission to do that, okay? So we would have to check and look at your permissions or ask your administrator, I can't see this. Do I have permission to do that? If they say no, you can come back and say, what do I need to do to get permission to do that? Or, oh, I can pass the buck off to somebody else. Whichever boat you fall into on that one, we can go ahead, you can use that. But if you don't see it here, it's because you don't have permissions, and we can adjust, you can get those permissions adjusted by your administrator if you want to do that, okay? So what do? We hit the button close. You're gonna get a little pop-up that looks something like this, okay? So basically, I'm personally a fan of closing my entities one at a time, but maybe we don't want to do that because we have 150 entities or 50 entities or anything more than 10 or so. And we want to close them by groups. We can create entity groups for closing that'll handle that for all of them. Hopefully, you know what I mean by entity groups, where we would go in and create a dimension group on location or entity that we would be able to close these from that, okay? So we would select that drop down here, and then we would select the period that we want to close to. Now, as you can see on here, the person, AKA Todd's Test Company, they don't close their subledgers like they're supposed to. So please don't put in the chat, why are you telling us to close our subledgers if you're not closing yours? Mine's a test company. If it was a real company, I would have them close, okay? Is it required to close all subledgers? No, it's not required. It is best practice, though, to close them and close them as you go. Okay. So I'm going to give you how to do the best practice here. And if you're going to say, no, I'm not doing that, then just ignore everything I said for the last 5 minutes or so. But when we get the question from you as to why some data stuff's in there, then we know that, hey, oh yeah, that guy from RKL did say I should do that. So maybe we should start doing that in there. Catching my breath. All right, next slide. Year-end preparation. Okay, what else do we want to do? Well, one is the main reasons that we want to close those sub ledgers like AP. And I'm going to continue with the AP for this particular process flow here. Okay, we want to reconcile our sub ledgers to our control account. So what does that mean? Well, I have a balance on my GL, right? And I have a balance in my vendor agent report. And in a perfect world, they're going to match. Okay. Now, before anybody says, what do you mean? What do you mean in a perfect world? Well, we can take steps, and we probably have taken steps to ensure that this doesn't happen. But I don't want to get ahead of myself because that's the next slide, and I don't want to steal that slide's thunder. So you're just going to have to kind of hold tight on that one and trust me for about another 2 minutes until I jump on to the next slide. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a vendor agent report. And this is going to be very important here. So I know I'm talking with a couple of my customers right now who are really, really struggling with this based on date. Okay. Well, if I'm running the aging, I want to look at the due date. Well, that's fine if we're looking to see what we need, what we really kind of forecasting as to how much we're going to be paying in these kind of buckets. But right now, what we're doing is we're reconciling to our control account, our GL balance. Okay. So we're going to use the GL posting date. Okay. So again, in a perfect world, which Sage is near perfect. So this should not happen provided we took the steps or take the steps on the next slide. So we'll talk a little bit about that again on the next slide, which is now going to be in about a minute versus the 2 minutes that I said before. Okay. If you're out of balance on these, you're going to look for one of the following things. Look for manual general ledger entries into our control or our AP account to see if there was any activity posted directly in there. Okay. Again, not to go too far into this because I'm sure your implementation person or you heard me do this last year. If you were on this call last year, I apologize for you being stuck with me again. I'd love to say I drew the short straw, but I volunteered to do this because I enjoy getting on with people and kind of hopefully invoking some things that maybe you didn't think of on there, or getting a chance to possibly later on interact with people that I don't normally get to interact with. But anyway, we're going to look to see if there's anything in there where you posted a journal entry directly to the GL. And we always, always, always tell you guys never, ever, ever post anything to a general ledger account using those AP or AR control accounts. Let the system do that through bills, through invoices, that type of stuff. Okay. Check cutoff dates. And when all else fails, contact RKL for additional assistance. Okay. So what steps can we do to make sure that that doesn't happen? Right here we go. Option to disallow direct posting. When we set up your control accounts, your AP, your AR, your retained earnings account, or your net asset account that has items that roll into them. Okay. Disallow direct posting. Now there may be times, all right, I know I just said retained earnings, or net assets, but maybe there's some times where we have to relieve unrestricted to make temporarily restricted or permanently restricted, or vice versa. We'll handle that later. But as a general rule, accounts payable, accounts receivable, retained earnings, control accounts, click this box. Make sure this box is checked for you in your chart of accounts to disallow direct posting. That means we can't post a journal entry directly to that account. Therefore, our aging report or our subledger report should always tie into our GL. Okay. Best practice, turn on for all control accounts and retained earnings. Again, my nonprofit friends, there might be some exceptions to that. There might be some other exceptions to that for you, but this is a general rule of thumb. If you're not sure about it, contact the person who did your implementation or reach out to one of us at RKL and ask the question. We'd love to have a conversation with you on that to make sure that you're doing the right, what's going to help you in the long run best. Okay. So that was very, very long-winded answer to say, don't post directly to AP, then this won't be a problem. But again, why do we close? We make sure everything ties out AR to AR, our vendor aging to AP, our customer aging to AR, all good. Let's close them, be done. It's good. It's locked down, ready to go. Fiscal year-end close process. Again, closing periods, we're talking more about this. So in this particular case, we didn't listen to Todd sitting there saying, let's close monthly. We're not listening to your implementation person who told you to do that. We're just going to close everything at one point. We're going to close it at the end of the year. Once we send out our financials, they go to our auditor or our accounting firm for review, or we send them out to our tax people and they make do anything they do. They give us our adjusting entries. We put them into the system and we are now hands clean, done with 2021, on to 2022. Going to be a better year because right now every year is going to be a better year than the year before. So what are we doing? Then we just closed the general ledger. Okay. Closing the general ledger will close all of the sub ledgers. Okay. If we remember back to our implementation times, there was probably a slide that we put on there that showed you how AP closes the GL. Well, let's go one step further. Purchasing closes the AP, which closes the GL. Order entry closes the AR, which closes the GL. Therefore, by nature, if we close GL, we're closing everything at once. Again, one more time, I'm just going to post in and say that that is not best practice. However, at a bare minimum, please do that. Okay. One of my customers that I'm implementing right now that I wish was on to hear that, because they're fighting me. They're saying, no, I'm not going through it. I'm not doing the monthly close. Okay. Don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm doing, but at least do this at the year end. Okay. So how do we do that? We go to general ledger, we go to all, we go to the book section, and then we choose close and we choose that period to close. Okay. So if you are a firm believer of not closing monthly and I offended you, I apologize. I should have said that disclaimer too. I will probably put my foot in my mouth at some point throughout there. I'm not telling you what you have to do. Again, just referring to best practices on that. The next thing we want to do is create fiscal year reporting periods. So if you're running your reports and you notice that what happened to 2022, I don't show anything past 2021. Okay. That means either number one, we only created the basic default ones if you're new to Intacct. So we didn't do, create any additional years out, or you've been using Intacct for long enough that all those future years that we created in implementation, you've already burned through and it's time to add new ones, which if that's your case, thank you much for being an Intacct customer for all those years. And we enjoy continuing to work with you on that. And again, if we're at the point where maybe we only did those for 1 year, we did that not out of mistake. We did that so that when you come to this year-end reporting class, we can show you how to add those additional ones for the future. It's always with a purpose, one of the way we do things. Okay. So how do we create those additional ports? We go to our company setup, import data, or if you worked with me in the past, that's going to be a favorite. See how that's started up there. We love our import data because there's all kinds of good stuff to use in there, whether it's updating vendors, updating customers, bringing in our 1099 balances. And I said that word. I didn't mean to do that yet. That's later in the day. So all of you people who work in AP that are dreading that time, I apologize if I caused you prior angst to what's going to come up here in the next couple of minutes. But again, import data is where we want to go for that. If we scroll down to reporting periods, or let's be honest, We probably hit Control F on Chrome to hit find and type in reporting. So it takes us right to that for us. But we're looking for reporting periods here. And once we get those reporting periods, you're going to see a box here that says default. Okay. And that will auto create the next 2 years of reporting periods for you. Okay. So what do we do then? Well, we're going to want to, because we never trust the system to do what it's supposed to do. We're going to go confirm that it did what it was supposed to do, right? Because that's just good accountants. We like to confirm everything. So we're going to go to our reports module. We're going to go to the setup tab. We're going to shoot over here to reporting periods. And if all goes well, we now see 2022. Yay, we do. Okay, and we would see 2023 too, but I did a search here. See that guy? I know it's really hard to see, but if you zoom in or if you put a magnifying glass up there, because that is really small, but I couldn't get it to fit on one slide. You'll see that our friend, that percent sign, the wild card that says, okay, if 2022 is anywhere in here, we're going to find that data. So that's what I used for this slide here. And again, I'm sure you all know about that wild card. Just a little plug for our friend, the wild card on there. All right. The other thing you can do is make a year end or a month end or both checklist. Okay, you can develop and document a closing process for your specific company entity, and then you can define those tasks and responsibilities and assign them, setting due dates. We love due dates, right? We need you to do this. Okay, I'll fit it in my schedule sometime between now and never. But if we have a due date, son of a gun, I have to have this done by Tuesday. Okay. Always set due dates or else things don't always get done. Okay. And for those of you who are completely on the ball and said, I do stuff right away, I like to get it off my plate, I apologize. I love you people. I try to be one of you people, but sometimes we get busy. So due dates are important there. Lock down retained earnings. No adjustments to retained earnings, only system created journals. Again, maybe your specific use case would require that. Before you just go rogue and start doing that, please confirm that. If you're still implementing or you've just recently implemented, contact your implementation specialist that you worked with. If you've been using it for a while, no problem. If you have any questions on that, and maybe you don't know who your implementation specialist is, or maybe you don't like them as much as you like me, just kidding. That would never happen. But you can always reach out to me, or you can reach out to anybody at RKL and ask that question if I should be making any entries to that based on your specific use case. Okay. But as a rule, lock down retained earnings. Don't do that. No need to touch retained earnings or perform an official close. Okay. We're not going to take the net income for 2021 and zero that out and post it. The system will do that for you when you run your reports. Okay. Okay. And again, RKL is here to help. If you run into anything with this, if you have any questions more on what we're saying, if you're like, well, I got the PDF, this makes sense, but I really don't want to go through and listen to that whole webinar again, it was too long, then just reach out to us. We're always here to help. We love helping people. We love 99% of your customers, of our customers. All right, 100%. I didn't want anybody to feel like, oh, maybe I'm that 1%. No, you're not. We like 100% of our customers. 1099 preparation and processing. All right. So those of you who are with Sage Intacct last year, or those of you who did 1099s last year, our friends at the government were nice enough to make that wonderful change from 1099 miscellaneous box 7 that we've used since the beginning of time to 1099 NEC box 1. And that was a lot of fun to make changes. Okay. So I think I recognize a few names on here of some people that I may have helped last year with this. We spent a lot of time helping on this. That we don't have to do anymore. Thank you very much for not making any more changes to the 1099s. So if you're listening to what I'm saying and you're reliving those nightmarish days, I'm sorry for bringing that back up. If you're reliving those days and you actually enjoyed that, I'm glad I brought that up for you. Okay. So just know we don't have to worry about that this year. All right. And there is our friend with the asterisks after that to remind us of the pain and suffering he caused us last year. Okay. So 1099 preparation and processing. You can purchase your tax forms. They are now available. I did double check that. Okay. But for ease of use, you see here how this has a generic one. They do have the 2021s out there. I did go to do that. And where did I go to do that? Well, I did both of these because I just wanted to make sure they worked, right? I went to purchase Sage Intacct supported forms from the homepage, clicking on the resource tab, clicking on checks and supplies, and then seeing the 1099s there. Or I could go to www.formsforintacct.com. That's if I'm going to print them for myself. Okay. All right. So what happens if I am new to Sage Intacct in 2021, or we're getting a precursor for this because we're going live in February or March of 2022, and I know I'm going to need to do this. So I want to get a jump on it, not wait till January of 2023 to do this. All right. So here's what happens when we set up our vendors. Hopefully we have a way that we can reconcile them to our old system and know which one means what. Hopefully we've tagged them as 1099 vendors when we did our implementation or when we set the vendor up. Okay. A lot of the times we'll say, hey, we'll talk 1099s and W9s right off the bat during implementation. So I know for a fact that some of you on here have heard this speech because you're working with me. So I know we've talked about this, and I know everybody else brings this up as well, but it is very important when you bring your vendors in to associate them with the proper 1099 form so that when you create your transaction throughout the year, it's tagging them for a 1099 vendor and it's tagging that to the correct box. Okay. So the wonderful thing is then at the year end, everything is done for us. We run our 1099 reports and we are done and say, wow, that is so much easier than it used to be in my old system. Thank you, Sage Intacct. Thank you, RKL. All right. But if we implement it in 2021, or again, if we're not doing it for January 1 of 2022, we may have some information that we need to bring into the system from our old system. Or if we had a vendor that we created, but we didn't realize until 6 months later that they should have been tagged as a 1099 vendor, and we don't want to go in and update every transaction, we can bring in the opening balance information. Okay. And I think I got a little bit ahead of myself here because this slide really wasn't going that far in deep, but we did also want to talk about when you have a 1099 cut vendor, it will pull on the 1099s, the vendor name. And if you pull anything in here in the 1099 vendor name on the additional tab, it'll bring that in as well. So for example, like a DBA type deal, or something along that scenario where maybe they do have an official 1099 name that's different from the vendor name. That's where you would fill that information out. Again, we would select which form 1099 that particular customer is using. All right, so I'm going to answer the question before it gets asked in here. Uh-oh, I see chats. Okay, not for me. What I see is, okay, real quick, lost train of thought, back on. What happens if I have a vendor, right? And one of my entities, for some reason, they're non-employee compensation, which shame on Todd, go ahead and call me out on this. I didn't update this slide for the NEC box 1. I'm sorry about that, right? But in another entity, that same maybe that's a small business owner who does some service for you. Maybe he's a plumber, does some plumbing work for you, or electrician, does some electrical work for you. But he also owns some properties that another one of your entities rents from, right? So we would set up our one entity where where that person, I didn't mean to say they are a 1099 NEC box 1, but for another entity where they don't use that person for that plumbing or electrical or whatever service that they're doing for you, but you have them as rents. So you would put them in as a 1099 box, whatever. I can't remember rents is right now off the top of my head. I used to know that. My apologies, but fortunately I don't have to file 1099s anymore. So you can select which box for which entity that's going to be. And again, that's where we're going to set up in here. Now on the next slide, what happens if I converted or implemented in the middle of 2021 or early 2022, and I'm going to have some residual information that I need to bring over. Again, if it's a handful of vendors, maybe 2, 3, 4, whatever, maybe it makes sense to just come in here. We can put in our initial values for the year. You can call me out. I didn't update this one for 2021. I used last year's slide for this one. Okay. I can put those amounts in here. Again, I have to pick which entity that it's in, which box it is in, for what year. Okay, so 2021 in this case, or maybe it is 2020, 2021, whichever. It wouldn't be 2020, it'd be 2021, sorry. Or for those of you implementing in February, March, maybe it's 2022 when that's there, right? You can put in that amount in here, and then that will add to the totals from what are in Intacct, producing the correct amount for the 1099 to display at the end of the year when you run your 1099s. Okay. Again, we can do an import. So if I scared you when I said the word manual, right? If we had 20, 15, 10, maybe heck, I'm not going to lie. I love the imports. I'd import 2 probably because I don't feel like going through here. There's an import in our company import data. And if we scroll down to our vendors, we'll see 1099 opening balances. It's a pretty simple import, not a whole lot of columns. It's not like the columns that go to column CC or CX or anything like that. It's pretty easy to work through on that. And again, if you want to use that, there is some good documentation in Sage's help menu for that, and you can always reach out to us for some help with that as well. Okay. So again, when are the scenarios where I would use this for initial values? It would be for if you implemented partway through the year and you wanted to bring in from your old system, or if you did not flag a vendor properly and you want to make sure you pick up all of those ones that weren't all of those transactions that were not flagged for a 1099 that should have been, and then import that in. You absolutely can. There's another import. Imagine that. For those of you who have worked extensively with the imports, you know what I mean. There's imports for almost everything in there except for what we really need the most at the time that you need it. But in 1099 under vendor, there's also 1099 transactions where we can do it by the transaction. So we could create a report, run a list of all the transactions for the year, delete out the ones that shouldn't be there, and then we can import those transactions to 1099 information for that. Okay, that again is not it's not that bad of an import to do. It's pretty manageable to work with. But again, as I always say, we are here to help as well with that. Okay. Now, the only thing I do want to caution you on this. Okay, so if you do use this when you run your 1099 report, you will see a line item called initial or opening balances or initial value. I think it says opening balances is what the description is, and that's going to be one big lump sum. So that, in conjunction with all the transactions, are going to be the numbers that you need to prepare your 1099s. All right. If we're doing them ourselves and we want to print the forms out, we go to accounts payable, all, report on the third column. Remember, our third column is always all of our reports. Our 1096, 1099, you have the different options here. So I want to print a 1096. I want to print 1099s. I want to run my 1099 report, or I'm using a third party because I need to electronically file those because I have over 20 vendors. Can't remember. It's on the FAQ later on, so we'll get that number for you. But that's where we come here and create that file. Which again, what's it going to do? It's going to send an Excel export file that you can utilize in your third-party system for that. There's also partners with Intacct that you can that will pull that and be able to file your 1099s for you. All right, when printing 1099s, when printing the 1099s, you have the option to exclude credit card transactions. Again, when we're doing that, when we're running our Form 1099, there's a checkbox down here. Just look at it. It's kind of small. It's kind of hidden. But I know some people, a fair number of people like to do that. Again, if we're using our create file, right? That feature create file, it's going to have some prompts here for you. We're doing it for all vendors. Again, it's only going to do it for 1099 vendors. Are we going to do it for employees? Are we going to exclude credit card payments? Do we want to include regardless of 1099 status? I don't check that box, please. Okay. On to the frequently asked questions that we picked up over the couple years of doing this. Number one, what if we have a third party print and email our forms? You want to create the 1099 file, then export the data. If you want to see the amounts paid to vendors along with their categories, you can run the 1099 report for that. And I said 20 is 250, right? If we have 250 or more 1099s, it's required that you file electronically. There are third-party programs that will help you file electronically, and they can be found at Intacct Marketplace with a search of 1099s, okay? I know I have Marketplace favorited because I always love to see what's out there, what's new and exciting in the world of Intacct partners. But you can go to Marketplace. I always just search marketplace.intacct.com, but here's the website that's on there, and you can do a search just for 1099s. Okay. What tax forms does it do? The 1096, 1099 NEC, which we know from last year, 1099 miscellaneous. And if you're new to this and you haven't done this before and you wonder why I keep saying it, talk to somebody who was here last year. It was a fun time. It was good times. Got to spend a lot of time talking with a lot of new vendors that I never got, or customers that I didn't get to work with. And I absolutely love working with them now. So really fun time. So there's the different forms we have. How do I update or change the amount of a 1099 for a vendor? Okay, you can manually update a 1099, a vendor's 1099 amount by going to the additional information tab under AP, right? Edit the appropriate vendor, click on the 1099 link, select the correct 1099 year, and then you can make that adjustment in that same field for initial balances. Okay, you can do a positive or negative if you need to make an adjustment with that. Year-end resources. We're winding down here. I can't believe it's been 45 minutes already. Hopefully it went as fast for you as it did for me, because I thought I had a lot more time than this. So I'm sorry. I will keep on moving here. RKL support at RKL eSolutions. You can always reach out to your implementation person directly. It's not best practice. It's best practice to reach out to support. But a lot of the times, I know if you've been working with someone and you really like them, you'll reach out to whoever that was, and they'll say, okay, I'll give you a hand, but maybe can you go in and create a support case and I'll jump on and help you quick. Okay. Or if it's something real quick, a lot of times we'll just answer it for you real quick. Okay. Sage Intacct online help, click help at the top corner. Again, for any of you who've implemented with me, or I know with Karen, who's on here as well, one of the slides we always use is our help. And there's a big thing where it says, we heart our help. We love Sage Intacct help. Help with Sage Intacct is one of the best, if not the best. I hate to speak in absolutes, but it's definitely one of the best helps out of any ERP system that I've ever worked with. I've worked with quite a few over my years. Okay. Sage Intacct community is another place where you all should have logins to community. And hopefully you're going in there fairly regularly. Hopefully you've posted an idea or two to help make Intacct a better place. but you can go in there and search help. Help there is going to give you articles. It's going to see open cases. You're going to see ideas related to it. You're going to see a wealth of information on there, hopefully, unless you type your question too obscure. So just kind of keep an eye on that, on how you enter those. Okay. Oh, how do we get there? From the home screen, under resources, we have community, and another plug for our friend Learning Center. There's still a lot of really good things on there. And if you implemented prior to, I want to say maybe Q1 of this year, you may have heard about the Intacct Fundamentals class, which used to cost money. It's now free in an on-demand scenario. So if you are newer to Intacct and nobody's told you about that, go to the Learning Center, click on your learning paths, start with AP, maybe do AR, but there's the Intacct Fundamentals class. It's like an 8-hour class, okay, but it's broken into modules, so you can do a module at a time. Super, super, super helpful class. I require all my customers to do that, and I've had very positive feedback on that. Okay, so my disclaimer is I haven't taken that class yet. I want to, but all my customers that I've implemented, I've made them that I've made to do that, that did that, said it was very, very good. Okay, so a little plug for that one on there. I did want to move forward with a few things. Again, you probably know your if you're in the middle of implementation, obviously you know who your implementation specialist is. But if you've already finished your implementation, your contact is with your customer account manager, who's Lisa Gillette, and her contact information is here. And again, you can always reach out to support, and you'll probably get a lady by the name of Leanne Segan. She is kind of our first line of defense on the support tickets. But you can always reach out to any of us if you have our contact information as well. Okay, we pride ourselves on not making it hard for you to get help. Shameless plug for the salespeople, which I am not, but there are some Q1 promotions for channel add-ons through December 31st, 2021. There's a 50% discount for ICRW, or Interactive Custom Report Writer, for Interactive Visual Explorer, and for SIBP. Please note, this is for add-on sales only, for the current subscription term only. If you have any questions about that, please contact Lisa Gillette at that email address to provide you a formal quote if you want to move forward with it, or if you have any questions on it. Okay. I'm not going to pause for dramatic effect on that, because I like to get away from sales stuff as quickly as possible and leave that to the people that know that better than me. And I'd like to say thank you and hope you have a happy holidays. If we do get to talk to you before that, great. But if not, again, please enjoy your time. If you do have any questions, you can contact us for any pricing, compatibility, or consulting needs questions for your business or business management solutions. You can reach out there. You can also reach out to any of us. So you heard me say time and time again, please reach out to us if you have any questions. We're here for you. We love our customers, and our customers who were met with us out at Transform hopefully can see that, because we had a great time with them. We love connecting with you guys whenever we can, and always just being there to answer a quick call. But we never want to see anybody struggle with our software, because we really do care about it. We like our software, and we love all of you guys. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar. I'll give you 10 minutes of your life back, because it was set for an hour. Hopefully you got something out of this. If you did, wonderful. If you didn't, I apologize. But if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, feel free to put any questions in here. Comments or feedback you can direct to Laura or anybody else at Intacct. If you don't want to say it to me directly, just kidding about that. But please reach out if you have anything else. I'm going to hang on the line until I get kicked off here. So again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, or put them not in the chat, put them in the Q&A, and I will hopefully be able to answer any of your questions. And again, thank you very much.